so to speak, where they don't understand the concept of height or depth, where the density is very, very low, vibrationally speaking, and they cannot necessarily imagine the idea of an up or a down. They can only imagine the idea of a forward, a back, a left, and a right. So they're very compressed into a very specific kind of densified focus of their existence of reality, their experience of reality. And it's sort of similar to the idea of how many people in your reality, in the third dimension, the fourth dimension, so to speak, can't necessarily understand the perspective of a fifth dimensional spirit being who can move through walls, see through walls, and all those sorts of things because of their particular perspective. So it's sort of a similar analogy to what you're not capable of perceiving, because you can't necessarily right now completely stretch your senses beyond the realm of fourth density as a physical being. Although to some degree you can exhibit some of that. And to some degree, a lower density being can imagine certain things that would be considered a philosophical point of view, but they're not really experiencing those things directly as they would if they were actually projecting their consciousness into a higher dimension. Did that make sense?
To some degree, as much as my mind can stretch to understand.
Yes. You can have just as much of a challenge imagining lower densities as you can imagining higher ones.
Is there a single clock for the whole universe, much like we have atomic clocks on Earth?
Well, if you're talking about the physical universe, then yes, it's what your scientists refer to as the Planck scale, Planck time. Because again, we have said that this is the actual tick of the clock of physical reality. This is what determines how many billions of times per second you are actually shifting. It's 10 to the 43rd. That's how many ticks of the clock there are in every second. 10 to the power of 43. That's the Planck scale. That's Planck time. That's the tick of the clock of the physical universe.
Fascinating. Let's see. What's the difference between the higher mind, the soul, and spirit guides?
All right. The soul, as we have said, is kind of like an overarching identity. And if it decides or chooses to have what you would call a physical experience, a portion of the soul, the non-physical portion, remains as the higher mind, and another portion is focused into what you experience as the physical mind. The physical mind has the physical experience, which feeds back into the higher mind and into the soul, that gathers that information and that energy and creates a more, shall we say, specific version of itself called spirit, because a spirit is specifically connected to a particular personal identity's physical experience. But that feeds back into the greater soul, who then contains that experience of that physical reality experience of the physical mind, having generated a kind of spirit representation of that experience in physical reality. So a soul, as we have often said poetically, is like unfired clay, and the spirit is like the ceramic that has been fired based on a specific physical experience. Spirit guides are those that simply are in spirit and remain in spirit while you have a physical experience, and are there to help guide you along with the higher mind. So your higher mind is kind of like your personal spirit guide, but it's a portion of your own soul, whereas spirit guides are expressions of perhaps a different identity, a different individual who simply isn't, in your experience, incarnate at that moment, and who is willing to help you along with your higher mind, guide you in physical life. Is that explaining it clearly enough?
Yes, that's fascinating. When we see others, as you've explained, our reality is a reflective reality.
Yes.
And so how do we interpret another person's expressions and their behavior, because we're actually seeing a reflection of our own consciousness?
Yes, but you're picking up on the vibrations that they're giving off, and you are translating them as best as you possibly can, or at least in the most relevant way, according to your own belief systems, about what you need to represent them by. So you're creating a simulation of them, picking up on their vibrational energy and creating a version of them that meets your particular filters or needs or belief systems about exactly how you need to see them and how you need to interact with them in the mutually agreed upon third reality that you are creating together.
So in order not to take responsibility for another person's negative behavior,
Yes.
while at the same time realizing that you are receiving a reflective experience.
Yes, but again, as we have said, it's not always a one-to-one reflection. There can be a variety of different degrees of reflection based on what it is you need to understand out of the relationship and experience and what they need to understand out of the relationship and the experience. So it's not just a one-to-one reflection, philosophically speaking.
So the idea of going into a belief system where, oh, well, this is happening and that's happening, so it must mean that I'm this or that, it doesn't really serve you to interpret what you're experiencing that way.
Well, we're not saying you can't interpret it, but what we're saying is you have to be very clear about what the interpretation is, because you can misinterpret it based on your belief systems.
Right.
So
Because
the
that's
clearer
where
you are, the clearer the interpretation will be about what it is that you need to get out of it, what it is they need to get out of it, and what you are responsible to them for without being responsible for them.
So it's a fine line between letting your negative beliefs come in a sense, undermine your self-esteem by taking responsibility for another person's negative behavior.
Yes.
And at the same time, it gives you an opportunity to look within and see whether or not you are exhibiting similar behaviors.
Correct. So you have to be very clear in your discernment about exactly to what degree the reflection is germane and relevant for you, and to what degree it isn't.
Between action and synchronicity. As example, I just left my job, but it took me longer than expected, and I was doubting because it happened by choice and not by synchronicity, as if I needed still a lesson to learn.
All right. First of all, it always happens by synchronicity because everything happens by synchronicity. So there's nothing that doesn't happen by synchronicity. It's just that you're not clear about the fact that there are two kinds of synchronicity. The first kind, most of you are familiar with. That's the one you normally talk about. The synchronicity of something being brought to you that's an opportunity to act on. But the other kind of synchronicity is the kind of synchronicity that actually prevents you from acting on things that are not appropriate for you to act on at that particular moment. And that's why it's always synchronicity. Because synchronicity is not only, just to use a simplistic analogy, is not only the gas pedal saying go ahead, it's also the brake saying no, you can't go this way right now. You need to stay where you are, or you need to look for some other avenue that is now something you are able to do, because you're not able to do this right now. So the balance between the idea of the synchronicity that says take this action and the synchronicity that says do not act in this direction is your guiding principle in life. And that's why synchronicity is also an organizing principle, because it's really keeping you on the straight and narrow by saying yes, no, no, yes, no, yes, no. It's really allowing you to move through a particular path that is you, by not only allowing you to move forward, but also preventing you to move forward in certain ways that are not appropriate. Does this help?
Yes, but so also my thoughts and because I could have done it like months before, but I didn't.
Why?
But there was not.
Why didn't you?
Because I thought it wasn't the right moment.
Then you are making your decisions, and you have to decide whether your decisions are being made for reasons that are in alignment with your truth or reasons that are out of alignment with your truth. And that's why it's so crucial to get in touch with your belief systems at any given moment, because it's always about the choices you make, but perhaps even more deeply,
It's about why you make those choices. So you have to be in touch with your belief systems to understand the reason why you make the choices that you do. Nevertheless, the situation and the circumstance is still brought to you through some form of synchronicity.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
That's why, again, we reinforce and encourage the idea that part of the formula that we offer and encourage all of you to use is based on primarily you understanding what the beliefs are that you're holding on to as being true for you in every situation. So the synchronicity will always bring you a circumstance that is designed to reveal to you what you believe to be true, so you can decide whether or not you want to continue to hold on to that belief or let it go. That's the first thing the higher mind and synchronicity does in bringing you into the experience of a particular situation. Does it represent who you prefer to be? Are you willing to take the action that is representative of who you prefer to be? Or are you not willing to take that action, and why or why not? That's the key. Always you have to know the reason for the choices that you make, and then you will be clear and transparent within yourself about what it is you're choosing to do. Yes?
Okay. Yes.
All right.
And I have also about belief systems.
Yes.
When my self-esteem is particularly creative, I arrive to ask myself if it is my lack not being able to interact with a version of my spouse which is more conscious and less reactive in order to have a more harmonious relationship.
Well, again, the idea is for you to determine clearly within yourself what is and isn't representative of the vibrations in your life you prefer to interact with. So you have to, again, make those decisions about why you are experiencing what you're experiencing, not that it's a one-to-one reflection, but the idea of why you might be willing to continue on something that isn't vibrationally compatible with you. Because you are hoping that somebody else will change?
Yeah, no, I understand it. I think my struggle is that I feel
Your challenge. Your challenge.
Challenge?
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't make it a struggle right from the get-go.
Yes.
It's just a challenge. It's something for you to know more about who you really are. So what is your challenge?
To divide my soul from my 3D experience.
Divide your soul?
Yeah, in the sense that I feel a deep, profound love for him.
Yes.
The physical experience
Yes.
is not harmonious. So I find it difficult to accept that I can't reflect this love in my physical experience.
All right, so you are being insistent on the conditions as a measure of whether or not you are who you prefer to be. That's insistence. And I told you that the third part of the formula is you can't assume or insist on anything. You can't put conditions on the idea of your passion. And if you truly love someone, you will then be honest with them in who you actually are in the relationship. And sometimes you have to really understand how important it is to show them the consequences of who you are. So sometimes a demonstration of your love may actually be leaving the relationship to show them that it's not the vibration you prefer. It's not the reflection you prefer. Then you're giving them an opportunity to decide for themselves whether or not they want to maintain that relationship and match your vibration, or whether they wish to continue their vibration and find whatever relationship actually works for them, while you go and find the relationship that works for you. That's the most loving thing to do. Love doesn't insist that the other person may change to give you the reflection you think you should be getting from them. That's insistence and placing conditions on them, and that's not love. Does that help?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yes.
watch what you're defining as love. Because if you really love someone, you will let them be who they truly prefer to be. You can always give them the choice, the opportunity to match your frequency in a way that you prefer. But remember, even if they do choose to match your frequency, it's not the same person anymore anyway. So what do you care that it doesn't really look like the same person? Don't go by surface appearance. If they decided to change and become more compatible with your vibration, it wouldn't be the same person anyway, no matter how you think they look on the surface. So don't insist that it has to be the same person that gives you the reflection in life that you prefer, because it never would be the same person no matter how they look anyhow. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
All right. Does that help you?
Yes.
All right.